Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in to this week's episode of the Successful Mind podcast, where we discuss families, boundaries, and the holidays. We leave you with some really great tips on how to thrive with your family during the holidays, and maybe even a little bit of a way to reconnect and get to know them a little bit better. Take a listen and let us know what you think.
You're listening to the Successful Mind podcast.
Successful people learn how to make their minds work for them.
We are Life is Now, and this is the Successful Mind podcast.
We get a lot of questions about boundaries, family, and
At
what
this
to
time
do
of year.
this time of year.
Yeah, those questions have been coming in droves, right? Like, how do I stay in an abundance mindset when I know I'm going to be around my family that has different beliefs than me? How do I talk about my business with my family? How do I not get triggered, and how do I not how do I stay true to myself? Like, you mean it? The questions.
How do you not get triggered with all that other stuff? That's asking way too much to not get triggered.
And I think it's tough because people love their family, right?
Of course,
they love their But then you've got like Aunt Edna, who's a shit disturber, and Uncle Joe, who can't be happy for anyone, and Cousin Amy, who doesn't understand what running a business is and thinks she's
a side alcoholic and falls down the stairs. And
so there brings in a lot of different dynamics that you can really insulate yourself from during the year, because you don't live with these people anymore, right? Even though you love them. I mean, they're your family. So I think that should be the topic, especially, knowing that in the next week, people are going to be around family more, and not just family, but extended family and husbands and wives of family, and traveling, which brings in a whole nother, and then trying to run their business at the same time. So I think it's just a great overall topic for us to discuss, to help people with this.
So this is a topic in general for everybody, because I think everybody goes through certain family things during the holidays. There's that. But there's also a lot of our listeners are business owners. They're constantly working on improving themselves and making changes. And they create an even more unique experience, because I'll never forget, my mentor was teaching on this idea one time, not on specifically about the holidays, but about how your change, in other words, when we decide to make a change personally, how that actually affects other people unbeknownst to yourself. And he said that whenever you change, you force other people around you to change, because they have to adapt to your change. And they don't know it, and they react to it, and it triggers them. And if you're not aware of it, you'll feel like it's crazy town. Like you have no idea where all this is actually coming from. And it's because people in relationships have a tendency to psychologically put each other in a box. Like, I know you, Steph, as I've known you for 15 years, and I know where your limits are and what you would do and what you would not do. And if something all of a sudden was way outside of that, it would trigger me. I would be triggered by, why are you doing something that's not in my experience with you? So I create a frame, and you create a frame for me. We create a frame. I have a frame with Brandon. Brandon has a frame with me and with you, and it's different. And then we have our extended family that, this is the other thing about this is interesting. Like, if you get into the mom-dad realm, our grandparents realm, they generally have you framed as how they saw you as a child. So they see you based on your limitations, your behavior, your emotionality, as you were when you're a kid. And they don't upgrade the data on that. So if you're coming back year after year and your life's getting better and better and better, and theirs isn't, and the frame around them is things are not getting better, things are getting worse, you're going to, it sets itself up for a real drama reaction within the context of we're all getting together to celebrate a holiday. It's interesting.
Well, and then there are a lot of people that carry a lot of like subconscious, because they're not 100% aware of it, shame around being more successful than their siblings or being more successful than
right.
their parents. And it's interesting you say that, we put each other in this frame, because it brought up a memory I had. I watched the J-Lo documentary. I'm a big fan of Jennifer Lopez. I think she's an incredible entrepreneur, an amazing woman, actually.
Yeah.
And I watched a documentary that she did, and it started off by her saying, I was the dancer, my other sister was the smart one, and my other sister was the singer. So I couldn't be the dancer and the singer. And she really had to break out of that frame. And
those were the roles.
Those were the roles.
Those were the roles.
And they were stated roles. Like they were roles that her parents stated out loud.
Is that right?
Oh yeah. Yeah. In fact, she left home at an early age because she just couldn't live under the parameters of who her mom thought she needed to be.
That's so interesting.
And that whole family dynamic's interesting too. You can see a little bit of it in the documentary. I'm not sure if you've seen it, but I thought it was fascinating. And I do think that, every family has roles. We talk about that in some of our seminars. Like, what role did you take on as a child? Were you the savior, the people pleaser, the rebel, whatever? Yeah. And then when that doesn't get upgraded, you fall back into those patterns when you're around your immediate family. And we hear that all the time from people. Like, I'm a totally different person when I'm not with my family.
Yeah.
And then I go back with my family and I fall back into this old role or these old patterns, and I actually set aside who I really am, and I become who they know me to be, so that we can have a peaceful get together.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
like,
absolutely.
That's what you're talking about with we operate within this box of who we see each other as.
Right.
And then, when you said when you change, you force other people to change. Can you say more about that? Like, how are you forcing other people to change?
Well, yeah, that's a great question. I wondered the same thing the first time that I heard it. So let me tell you a story. So when I first started going to seminars and starting to read, and I had no idea what the information that I was consuming. I was really searching. The kids were little, and we were doing this thing where we're going to my mother's house for Christmas. Mm-hmm. Every year. So we would go to my mom's house for Christmas, and then we would go back home. We would have Christmas by ourselves, and then we would probably go to my wife's parents' house or her sister's house, something like that, on an off day or whatever. And this would go back and forth, like a lot of families do this. And I remember sitting at the dinner table and thinking to myself, is it just me? Or are we having the same conversation every year, every time we get together? And it was like I noticed this, right? Like it became very noticeable to me. We talked about this exact same thing almost at the exact same time last year. And the things that we were talking about were not that great either. So on the way home, I was thinking about this, and my wife said to me, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, I'm okay. I said, "Let me ask you a question." I said, be as honest with me as you possibly can. I said, "Did we not have the exact same conversations the year before and possibly the year before that?" She goes, "I was just thinking the same thing." She said, "You're right." She said, "I think you're 100% right. Every year we go to your mother's house, we have the same conversation about the same things throughout the entire night that we're together." And So this was a revelation of the mindset that my family was in, and the stories that went with that mindset, and they were established for years, and they just kept repeating themselves. So now, fast forward a couple of years, I start becoming successful, and it's becoming known in my family. And we go to these holiday dinners, mm-hmm. and things are starting to change significantly. The stories are starting to change. There's an edge to everybody's energy, and I'm not understanding why this is happening. I'm noticing that something's going on, And it kind of tipped when when I started to be making some money, I wanted to buy my mother something that she always wanted, that she didn't have the money to buy for herself. And I thought it was very important to her because she always talked about, someday I wish I could get this thing, blah, blah, blah. And I bought this thing for her and I gave it to her for Christmas. And the way that she reacted when I gave this to her floored me, because she started to cry. She was shaking her head like no. She had to put it away. She couldn't acknowledge it. You could see that she was extremely embarrassed about this. Like there was this shame that came over her or something. And she literally got up and took it out of the room and put it away, came back to the room and acted like I never gave her anything at all. And I'm going, what the fuck is going on? Like this was the most bizarre. I had no idea what to do. I didn't know what happened. I felt like I did something wrong. Anyway, I went back to my mentor about this, and this is when he started to explain to me this idea that when you change, you force other people to change because they have to adapt to your change. So the way that he explained it to me was, look, he said, people have an expectation of who you are, what you are, how they interact with you. And basically to that idea, they feel safe in the vulnerability of that relationship. When you begin to change and you start becoming something that they even possibly might judge, like being successful, you're no longer safe to be around, but they don't know why you're not safe anymore. And they find themselves judging you, and they don't even know why they're judging you, but they become triggered just by who you're becoming. And this is a person, and we're not talking about somebody who's like becoming a criminal. We're talking about somebody who's bettering their life, right? Yeah. They're actually doing much better things. They're doing well.
Yeah.
And mom's getting triggered, and dad's getting triggered. Siblings are getting triggered. Grandparents are getting triggered. People are getting triggered because you're outside of the box of what has been the acceptable norm for the family. And then if you don't realize that this is happening, so let me back up for 1 second. So because you're doing this, you're doing a conscious change on yourself, and you're not necessarily communicating this with anybody else. They have to learn how to act and respond differently to the new person that you're becoming. So for them, it's like a stranger in the house that they don't know. And they don't know why you've changed. They make judgments, they make assumptions. Like it just gets really bad for those individuals. And in many cases, it causes extreme disturbances within the family. All the years that we've been working with people, every year it's the same thing. There is a giant handful of people that just have major, major issues going home to their families. And the judgment, the ridicule, not being able to buy gifts. Who do you think you are? You better than us. Passive aggressiveness. It just goes on and on and on with these individuals. So that's the idea. You're making a change. They have to adapt to your change. So it's a forced change. It's not like you're asking them to do anything, but they have to adapt to it. So they're forced to adapt to that situation because it's changed.
And it comes out in them being not their best selves, but not understanding why they're not being their best selves. Is that what you're saying?
Right.
Yeah. Brian and I both experienced this. We have a family reunion every year. And when we first left our teaching jobs and started building this business with you, and they were seeing on Facebook that we were traveling a lot, right? Like
your family was seeing that.
Yeah. Brandon's family.
Okay.
Yeah. This is Brandon's side of the family. I'm not going to touch my side of the family today. But we would go to a family reunion, and one of two things would either happen. I would be approached, and the conversation would be, "Wow, must be nice to be able to travel as much as you do," which is like passive aggressive, right? And my response is, "It really is. Where are you excited about going? Because how else do you respond to something like that?
Right.
Or they wouldn't even ask us about what we're doing or how we're doing the things that we're doing. They would go around us and ask, like Liz, for example, who was working as my assistant at the time, to get information about what we were doing. Like they wouldn't even come and say, tell me about your business. Tell me about what you guys are doing. Tell me about who you help. And no, it was either we were, gee, it must be nice, right? Or no one spoke to us, right? And I was not expecting it like that. I think that the good thing with the people that we work with and with this podcast is that you're not blindsided by whatever happens at your family gathering, right? You go in kind of pre-planning how you're going to respond and how you're going to navigate the situation for the best possible outcome. But I mean, I know you had, are you a millionaire yet?
Yep.
Comments from people in your family, right? Like, it's hard for people to see other people be successful because they think they take that as that there's something wrong with them because they're not.
Yeah.
And they're not conscious of that.
Yeah. Well, I have one person that's the same thing over and over again. This person says to me every time I talk to this person, so what are you up to? And I'm like, well, I'm working, I'm building this podcast and I'm doing this and that, and they're like, well, that sucks. And I'm like, no, it really doesn't. I love what I do. Like, it doesn't suck. And they're like, yeah, well, not everybody else sees it the same way, and he asks me the question how's it going? What are you doing? What are you up to? And I'm like, I'm working. That sucks. Work sucks. I'm like, maybe it sucks for you. I get it. I get it that the work sucks for that person. But it's so interesting to hear the same thing because it's like, doesn't it dawn on somebody if somebody else is enjoying their work and your work sucks that you're not face to face with an opportunity to change? Like, oh, maybe I should look at this as I could do something that I actually like to do. But they don't think that way at all. It's as if you're wrong for enjoying your work.
Yeah.
Right? And poor me, I have to do something that sucks. Well, those are the choices that you made. I didn't want to settle for that for myself. I wanted something different and I went after it and I got it. So you do the same thing.
Yes. So for the people listening that know that they're going into what could potentially be a semi-painful situation or a not so joyous situation, I think we should give them some tips on how to kind of navigate this, how to kind of cope with this.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Just don't go. That's the easiest thing. Don't go. Just turn it down.
Well, I mean, I think, it's interesting because there are a lot of people that go home for the holidays because they feel it's their obligation to go home for the holidays.
Yeah.
They don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. If they were just themselves and they were choosing what they wanted to do, they would probably, go to Fiji for a vacation and skip the whole thing, right? I mean,
Yeah, I agree with you. It's a tough thing. And here's the thing. Just because you may have negative people in your family doesn't mean that you want to cast your family.
Correct.
To the dogs, so to speak.
Yeah.
But you do need to learn skills as to how to navigate it. Now, when I worked with Proctor, he used to say, don't go as often and don't stay as long. In other words, don't put yourself in the situation that you really can't do anything about for extended long periods of time because it just makes it harder every single time. But I took that a step further and I thought to myself, okay, let me take responsibility for this situation. So I'm going here. There's a conversation that's happening. I'm as much a part of that conversation as anybody else is. So what if I really start focusing on leading these conversations?
Yes.
And moving them in different directions? Because I'm the one that's thinking. They're not thinking. So that means that I have to pay attention. I have to watch them. I have to read the other person. I have to see what they're talking about. I have to see how do I create something that they will grasp onto and move in a different direction and get them off of something that's triggering everybody at the table, that type of thing. And I got really good at it over the years. I knew what to stay away from, first and foremost. I would lead conversations almost in a baiting situation, like talking about something that's good, but something people were interested in, so that they would take that bait and run with it in that direction. And if I started to see it turn around, I would bring something else up. I would pre-think these things before I even went. And they're family. You know what interests these people.
Right.
Don't play like you don't know what interests these people. But it does require that you think and you take some leadership in these situations to change it.
Yeah, so I go in the same way. I am a big fan, as you know, of conversation starters.
Yes, you are. And you're fantastic at it,
right?
by the way.
So I I don't prefer sitting around a table and having small talk with people. Like, to me, it's just surface. It's a waste of time. Nobody's really enjoying it. I prefer that if I'm going to have a conversation, I want to learn something about you. Like, most of my family, I don't know that well.
Right.
Like, I hear the stories of them telling, stories that they tell of when they were children. And on my dad's side, they all were raised on a farm. I have no idea how they all survived, quite honestly, based on some of the stories that they tell. Like, crazy shit went down on the farm with these kids. And then my mom's side of the family, I'm really not that close with, because they were dispersed. Like, it just wasn't a close family on that side. So when we get together with my dad's side of the family and we bring our girls, like, I want to have a conversation where the kids can learn about what it was like when they were a kid or what's exciting for them. So just like I do this with our team retreats, I did this with our Christmas team party, is that I pose a question to the group and then everyone goes around and gives their answer. And as you all know, I love control. And this is a way to control the situation so that you're not talking about what's on the news or politics or hot touch, no touch topics that just invite, conflict. Because nobody's going to win, right? Nobody's going to win in that situation. So I go in, and this year I'm going in with 3 questions, same three questions that I pose at our team retreat. So if any of you are going in and want some conversation starters, you might want to write these down. The first one is, if you could relive a year of your life because you want to relive it because it's so good, what year would you relive and why? Yeah,
that's a good one.
Right? Because
it is a very good one.
Everyone stops and thinks, and they're like, "Ooh, what would I say is the best?" And it's positive.
Yeah.
Right? So it's like it's a positive.
Yeah, but wait a second. You just did this at a dinner that we were at.
I did.
One of the things that I noticed was that the initial response was thinking about a year that was bad and wanting to change it.
And that is
not what you actually said. So it's interesting what a person hears.
Yeah.
Right? So I just wanted to throw that in. I thought that was fascinating.
So watch out for that one. But this was like the best year in your memory that you'd want to go back and just relive, like do it all over again because it was so good. And it's amazing because people have to take the time to think about it. And so many stories come out of that conversation starter, right? And
so many stories.
And it's applicable to any age.
Yeah.
Right? You ask that to grandma who's, 85, and her stories are going to be her stories are going to be way different than your 18-year-old kid. So that's one. The second one is, what are you most excited about right now?
Okay.
So like, what in your life is really exciting? Because people who aren't thinking generally don't talk about what's exciting to them. They err toward complaining. And we did a whole podcast on complaining and why that creates like cohesion within a family.
Right.
But to kind of flip it from being that positive thing or from being that negative thing all the time to, what are you excited about right now? And then the third question, which I love because it does bring out, it's kind of a flip. So it allows you to go into the negative, but it's a positive question.
Okay.
So it's, what am I so glad that I never have to do again?
Yes.
Like, what am I so grateful that I never have to do again? And mine is always manual labor. Not a fan of manual, like paid, like I'll go do yard work, whatever. Not a fan of paid manual. Did quite a bit of it in my high school years. Like, wasn't a fan. But that answer runs the gamut too. You get like, I'm glad I never have to have orthodontia again. I'm glad you know what I mean? Like,
for sure.
I'm glad I never have to, share a dorm room with someone. And so it talks about what's kind of negative, what they didn't like about something, but it frames it in a positive way, and it brings out stories, which allow you to ask questions and connect.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you could even say, what are you grateful that you never have to do again?
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
So
however you want to phrase it. Yes.
But that's what it's bringing out. I mean, and when we went around a pretty big table of people when you were doing these questions, and most of the answers were pretty positive. Like, you could see why a person would not want to do certain things again. And life is about experiences, right? You experience things and you're like, nope, that's not for me. Don't want to do that one again. Let's go do something. It's how we learn how to make choices.
Yeah. I love conversation starters in really any frame. I mean, when Brandon and I go on date nights, I have conversation starters on my phone, and I ask him questions. And each time
we've only known each other for what, like 24 years at this point, and there's conversation starters at the ready.
Yes. At the ready.
Yeah, because otherwise you default to how was your day, and you start talking about work.
And you've even started reframing that simple question right there over the course of the last month.
I refuse to ask Brandon how his day is because I always get the same response: fine, good. Great, whatever.
And even when you say you can't say good or great, it still comes in.
I'm like, I got to get better at asking questions. So I say, what was the best part about your day today? So it's specific, right?
Yep.
Like, you could ask that at the dinner table. What was the best part of 2022 for you? Like, what was the highlight?
I love that you bring these questions up because the question about, reliving the best year of your life, we both had the same exact year when we had that conversation over dinner one night. Yeah. I participated in this 2 or 3 times now, and I love the fact that she keeps bringing them out because you get a chance to look back in a positive light and it takes the negative completely out of it. And it's almost like you're reliving it. We're not living in the past, but we're going back and we're just reliving those moments that made us. I thought it was, I love your conversation starters. Don't ever stop doing that.
And here's the thing. We're programmed to answer questions.
Yep.
Right? So it's different than proposing that everyone plays a game, which could be a disaster or it could be a good thing depending on the game. Yeah. But most people are not going to be like, I'm opting out. I don't want to answer this question. They're going to start thinking, how am I going to answer this question? And so it engages everybody at the same time. And it gives you a glimpse into who they are and how they think and what's important to them. And that's really the goal, right? That's really the goal in the holidays is to reconnect with your family.
It should be the goal. I mean, it's not to get around and bitch about everything. But, as I'm listening to this and I'm thinking to myself, like if on a grander scheme, what is it that we're looking at here? And it's a positive creation of an event that you want to go well. If you're designing it. So anything that you want to go well, you're going to design. You're going to put effort into it. You're going to look at what would make it not go well, what would make it go well. And I think that people just don't think that way for gatherings and stuff. And that's how crazy shit ends up happening. Because like you said, when you're asked a question, you're programmed to answer it. We don't think, should I answer this question? We think, how am I going to answer this question? And rarely do we actually think about how we're going to answer the question. So when you're in a group of people and some cocktails are flowing or something, and somebody's had something bad happen in their life, that might be the surface thing that's right there. And because the question is triggering them or whatever's going on, they're not actually using their mind to think about something, which is what your questions do. It gets them thinking in a direction about something that's generally benign that is probably also fun to talk about because it has to do with them or their past or something that they've experienced in their life, and they can't wait to tell you.
People love to talk about themselves.
They love to talk about themselves.
Yeah.
That's our narcissistic sensibilities.
Whatever do you mean?
Right.
Do we really? I don't know about that.
And then,
where do you get these things? Would you make them up yourself or do you find them online? Is there a book of these things we could buy?
There's
conversation starters.
Here's the thing.
Conversation starters all over.
While we were having this conversation, I came across a list of 50 Christmas dinner conversation starters. You can actually get a free printable download
50.
from our people at playtivities.com. So playtivities.com has 50 conversation starters, and they're all manners of things to being about if you were snowed in with your family for a month, what would you do? Who the person sitting across from you, what is the nicest thing they'd ever done for you? They all skew positive, and it allows people to just answer great questions about each other. It warms your heart.
Yeah.
The Grinch's heart grew 5 times that day.
And I think you also need to feel empowered to say, for you as a thinking person, for you to say, I don't really want to talk about that. If someone asks you a question that is going to lead to the wrong place or they don't have capacity to understand, you either deflect and change the question, like fire a question back at them, or you just say, I don't really feel like talking about work right now.
Right.
Let's talk about what's going on with you.
A boundary.
Which is a boundary.
It's a boundary. And it's something that you should pre-think going into, like if you know that there's issues with the family, you should pre-think what are you prepared to talk about if you get asked, right? The thing about this is that only the first time does this really grab people unaware. This is your family. You know what they do. You know how they treat this one and that one and the other one and all down that road. So if you're doing things and you know that you've gotten a comment like, so what's all this travel like, or however it is that they
must be nice to be able to travel
yeah,
so much.
Exactly. You know that you can create a response to that moves it off of the topic of the evening,
Yes.
so that it's not making anybody feel bad or it's an awkward answer, because that can actually be an awkward, when you're in a situation where you're doing way better than somebody in your family, and you know that the person that you're doing better than really is not at the place where they're actually thinking logically about their life and they can change anything, it's going to make them feel bad.
Yeah.
Right? Because they don't know how to change their thinking. That's why they're judging it to begin with.
Right.
It'd be different if it was inspirational. Like if we were all sitting, it's like us, if we were sitting around talking about things, it'd be like, oh, fuck, that's so cool. I want to go do that, or let's go do this. And it's not that we'd be triggered by what the other one accomplished or what they did. We'd be inspired by it, or at least interested to, like, that's an amazing story. Tell me more about what that trip was like or whatever. But the idea is that you have to put the effort into the solution yourself, right? Because it's not going to change on its own.
No.
It'll just continue to get worse. And really, as much as I got good at changing different directions with different conversations, your solution is the one that I've liked the best. The conversation starters, you've been doing it for years. It works really well. It works in small groups. It works in large groups. And it's, I've never seen it go bad. Let me put it to you that way.
No,
I don't know if you guys have ever had it go bad
No.
on your own, but I've never seen it go bad.
no.
It's almost, it's no fail. It's infallible. There's no way it can fail, because you're right. We are trained to answer questions, and they are always positive. And if someone brings it to the negative, the next person always seems to pick it up and bring it to the positive anyway.
Yeah.
So we self-correct and we right ourselves.
Yeah.
For sure. I've got 3 no-fail steps to avoid the holiday minefield these are my own, that I use when I go into situations. The first one is I have no expectations. I think the problem is when we go in with these really high expectations, we want it to be perfect. Just like when we go to our wedding, there's these certain days throughout the year where we want them to be perfect. And if they're not perfect, then everything is ruined, all or nothing thinking. This is my philosophy. So I go in with I'm not going to say low expectations, but it's just no expectations at all. It's going to be what it's going to be. Que sera, sera. Second thing is be flexible. Things are going to change. There's got to be some flexibility in these plans, okay? And then last but not least, this is a big one that I learned in my own personal therapy journey. It's just stop. Meaning stop, take a breath, observe what's going on, and then proceed mindfully. These are all that is my acronym for stop, and it helps me in these situations, because the old me gets triggered and I start like lashing out at the people around me, and I totally have ruined many a holiday for bringing that in.
So you talk super fast.
Yeah.
What did STOP stand for?
So stop stands for, first of all, the S is stop, period.
Okay.
Just picture a red stop sign in your mind.
Okay. So before you fire back.
Before you fire back,
Okay.
you stop. That red stop sign is up.
Okay.
The T is to basically take a breath, like let it sit.
Which helps you stop.
Which helps you stop. Yes. Take a breath. And then this is the big one. Observe. Just observe yourself, observe others. And then the P is proceed mindfully. This is a old RO DBT technique that I've learned many years ago that has helped me very much. Yes, I do talk fast. So yes, stop, take a breath, observe, and then proceed mindfully. Nice. And then my bonus tip is, and this is, I'm not saying throw your sucker in the dirt, but let them be right. This is a hard one for me. For the person who has a strong need to be right, let them be right. Because if they're right, then it totally squashes any sort of beef that's happening in the moment.
You suck all the energy out of the argument if you just let them be right.
100%.
It stops immediately,
Yeah.
right? They may repeat themselves a couple of times, but it's gone. They've got nothing to push back against. It's,
Yeah,
it's
100%.
just,
so as we walk
gone.
out, you've provided us with a tremendous amount of great information we're going to take with us to our holiday dinings and our gatherings with all of our family and all of our friends, just to sort of walk us out. I think that'll be kind of fun. Are there any special holiday traditions that you take part in or will be taking part in next week as we go into the final run up to the Christmas season?
No, because my kids are grown and they're creating their own traditions. So there's nothing there. We're going to get together, but nothing that's repeating itself, really. Maybe
Sure.
maybe the food, they like special dishes, around Christmas time. But outside of that, there really isn't anything.
Yeah, I think food for us for sure. And our kids, while they're grown, they're not grown. I still get them for Christmas. I'm savoring every Christmas that I get to spend with them before they go off and start their own families. So we open presents on Christmas morning, and then we have breakfast together, and then we go to a movie.
Big breakfast.
Every Christmas morning we go to a movie. I'm super excited to see the new Avatar. That's what we're going to be going to this year. Also, Christmas Eve, we have a big dinner, and we invite friends, whoever wants to come for Christmas Eve dinner. And we do Christmas crackers, which is an English tradition where you pop the things, and then there's toys, and then we wear
the crackers too.
We wear the paper crowns and tell jokes.
Yeah.
Because I love jokes,
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of Big Breakfast in the movie.
Yeah.
It's interesting to go out and celebrate Christmas going to a movie, and you see everybody who's there wearing their new Ugg boots or wearing their new sweats. Everybody's dressed up, decked out to the nines, and it just gives you an opportunity to get lost for a little bit and spend time with your family. So that would be mine as well. Cool. Well,
Happy holidays, everyone.
Happy holidays.
Yeah, thank you.
Happy New Year.
Happy holidays. Happy New Year.
Hey, everyone. Thanks for joining us and listening to this podcast. Hopefully, we've given you some insight into some family dynamics during the holidays and some real helpful solutions on how to have a really grateful, glorious, and fun holiday season. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening to the Successful Mind podcast. If you like what you've heard and you want to know more, go to lifeisnowinc.com.